Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hustling Sideways podcast. I'm Alan Halas. I'm a music writer from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And I'm Jim Love, and I'm a keynote and motivational speaker, also in, not from, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And this is the Hustling Sideways podcast. As you can see, it's a little bit of a different setup today.
Raise your hand if one of your microphone cords don't work.
Yeah, I know. That's me. Yeah.
But we're good. We're set. We made it.
Welcome to episode 72 of the Hustling Sideways podcast. Jim, it's been a while since you and I have actually sat in this room in a non-Marquette setting to do an episode of the podcast.
Yeah, we were just talking about how long it's been, and neither of us remember, which that's not a surprise. We don't remember anything. But we were like, it wasn't November. It wasn't October.
Right.
It maybe was early.
I actually don't know. We went on a run in like June.
Yes.
So I don't know.
And not only that, we've now switched up like where we sit. If you've seen this show, like I'm usually over there. Like, so we're just, everything's...
Next week, he'll be right back over.
I feel... I'm actually going to head out.
Yeah. That would be actually amazing if you just left in the middle of the podcast and I'm just here like,
yeah. No, but we're happy. We, if you don't know, and actually I'm not even sure when this episode comes out, but I really don't care. It comes out Monday. Marquette is the number 3 team in the country and that is fantastic, and we are very proud of them, and the Shaka Effect hits. And if you didn't know anything about this podcast, we are all Marquette alumni here, and we are unapologetic about that. And it was a heck of a showing in Hawaii. We have a lot of friends that went there. They lost the last game. Who cares? They were 2-1. It was fantastic. And all I got to say is, if you're a basketball fan, yes, if you're a basketball fan, Milwaukee is quite literally the capital of the basketball world right now.
I like it.
The women's team is ranked. The men's team is number 3. The Milwaukee Bucks are
the Milwaukee
Bucks. And are there other teams that we should? UWM
exists.
Yeah, MSOE probably has a rec team that is really good. So come to Milwaukee.
MATC won their national championship last year.
I knew that. I was just leaving it out purposefully. Yeah, so there, it's a wonderful place to be. That's a moral story.
And we are proud Marquette alums. We are interviewing some Marquette alums.
We sure are.
As well today.
Yes.
Jim, who is in this immediate room with us? Who do we have on the show?
Who are you? So we have John and Ben Teich. And listen to all I gotta say, y'all. They are brothers, and they are literally the same person. So listen to this. John is a program manager at Husco, and Ben is a project manager at Husco. But also, and more importantly, right now, they are the co-founders and owners of Mythic Gems board games. So John and Ben, welcome. To Hustling Sideways.
You know, we had all that time off. We didn't buy a soundboard for like the effects thing.
No, but it's our shtick. It's like that's like we're not going to get more like expensive than us just clapping and going like this when the.
I could still buy or do it in post.
I don't want it. I would throw it out.
Never. Anyway, welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about we've already established Marquette alums as well, but tell us a little bit about your background, where you guys both grew up.
Cool. Yeah, I'll start.
Wouldn't it be great if it was separate? They're like, actually, we grew up like 3,000 miles
apart. Yeah, I don't even know who this person is.
It was a parent trap.
We parent trapped him. Yeah,
you'd be very surprised.
Awesome.
No, we both grew up in Whitefish Bay. Mm-hmm. This will be easy because I get to answer the question, and you get both of our stories right off the bat. But we went to Holy Family, went to Marquette High, and then we went to Marquette U after that, stayed local. The running joke was our college was closer to home than high school was. So
that's very true.
We did stay local, and I now live in River West, and John here lives in Tosa, so we get to see each other all the time and work together.
For those of you that don't know, they literally just described like the Wisconsin experience of staying very, very close to home, going to high school and college on the same street, and then now also living in Wisconsin too.
Oh yeah, I was the same way actually. I grew up.
I know you guys
literally
went
to high school like 5 minutes from here, from this immediate room, and grew up about 10 minutes from that place, and stayed in Marquette because of that. I actually went to Marquette because it was closer to, and it was cheaper to live off campus than to like go down to DePaul.
He was a commuter student. That's what we called them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, how do you want to move far away when your dad was a chef growing up? So
I didn't know
you
that.
go home for those home cooked meals. It's kind of just a nice little perk of being in the area.
Where is he a chef anywhere still in the?
He was a chef at Sanford and Coquette in the 3rd Ward.
Okay.
Coquette's no longer in the 3rd Ward anymore. That space has had a lot of new residents and come and gone, but Sanford was the big one. But
Okay.
That's wild.
Well, that's top tier food. So
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's not McCormick style.
No.
Or like Schrader. Although Schrader's chicken parm was pretty lit. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we did establish before the show started, and I'm sure she'll listen to this show, is John and Ben's sister, Megan. I was their orientation leader, or her orientation leader in college, which I was like, I know exactly who you're talking about. And I
Very
never
small
put the
world.
connection together. And that's just how things work here in Milwaukee. It's a very small city.
very small
Apparently.
world.
But anyway, Megan, if you're listening, it's good to
Megan.
good to have you hear my voice again, I guess. I was gonna say good to see
I
you.
don't know you, but hello.
Yes,
Nice to meet
we're
you.
happy you're here.
Yeah.
It's a group hello.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Tell us a little bit about, like, I guess, were you always people that were creating things? I mean, we're going to get into the board game in a little bit, but were you people that were like, working at, were you gamers growing up? Were you drawing? Like, what was kind of like creative background?
So we grew up in a very competitive household, especially Ben and I being identical twins, but Megan never backed down to a challenge either. So I think for starters, it went back to games of Clue or games of Monopoly. We're so competitive to the point where I once bankrupted the bank in Monopoly, and there is a Post-it note in the box that says how much money I won during that game because it was over the limit of the money in the game.
Oh my
so, like,
gosh.
to a point of being that competitive, but we also just loved all sorts of games growing up. But it was your classic ones, your Monopoly, your Sorry, your Life, nothing
Sure.
too
Yeah.
serious, but
Did you guys have like game nights set aside? Like every Sunday or something was a game night, or it just happened kind of randomly?
I think it was more just kind of random.
Yeah, that's cool.
It wasn't ever something we planned, but it was something we tried to get our parents involved in, all three of us involved in.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a little tricky because my mom only ever wanted to play like Yahtzee, which
Okay.
is a great game. Like no hate
no
on
disrespect to Yahtzee.
Yeah, we love Yahtzee, but it was
Good at it.
it was good that
Probably
we
why
had
she
the
wanted to play
three
it.
of us.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Hard to beat.
During the pandemic, I first picked up Monopoly, like, seriously, obviously outside of being a little kid.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we, like, the PS4 had the online Monopoly. So during the pandemic, you and like 4 or 5 people could play.
It was great.
So we'd all like sit down with a drink and play Monopoly.
Yeah.
None of us ever bankrupted the bank, though.
Yeah, that's
because-
actually. I feel like that should be
accomplishment.
like that's on
Yeah.
like her Wikipedia page now or something.
Yeah.
That's the big deal. Now I would say like my family had set aside nights. That's why I asked that because like whatever. But we are so uber competitive, it actually became not fun. It turned into arguments. And
Were you
like,
the one that flipped the board?
I was not, surprisingly. I'm not going to say who, but it happened. And let's just say that game nights were few and far between after that. Then we went outside. I come from a family of wrestlers, so we wrestled.
Oh, my God.
Or shop
Literally
baskets.
Took it outside.
Yes, like you want to talk outside, and we went to the garage. We had a big wrestling mat in the garage, and it's a good way to blow off some steam after a wild game of Yahtzee or Monopoly. It worked out pretty well.
Who is more likely of the two of you to flip the board
I'm gonna guess.
and give up?
Can I guess?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna say John.
I don't think so.
It depends on the
Really?
game.
Okay.
I think, so there's a good story here. We were both RAs in college at Marquette, and we were hanging out with a group of RAs in Abbotsford in the lobby, kind of where the RA room was, and we lived on the 3rd floor. So, very, very close. And after a competitive game of catchphrase, my partner wasn't really picking up on my clues. I was getting a little disappointed about it. I stormed off to the elevator and then had to wait for the elevator to come for like 2 minutes instead of taking the stairs up
The
to
worst-
my
the
dorm
worst
room.
wait.
I know, it was like they peek out around the corner. Yep, he's still there. He's like, I'm storming off.
Still sulking.
Yeah,
I'm still mad. I'm still mad about the game.
That's like a
I
movie
swear.
scene. It's like,
it was. I was like, come on.
is it coming?
Angrily wait for the door.
Yeah, fuming. Don't look at me.
So you get a little fired up then. If that's
I
the
can
case.
get get pretty involved in
Yeah.
the game.
To give another example of it, which was recently actually, we started to get into more in-depth board games. So think Terraforming Mars or Castles of Burgundy. It has come to the point where we'll go up to Door County. We have a house up there, our family does, and we'll bring up one of these games to play. And these games take us 2 hours, maybe 2 to 3
Okay.
hours to play. And at the end of the game, it'll come down to the last move, and one of us is maybe a couple points away from winning.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we just cannot figure out how to make that final move to try to win the game, to the point where I've gone to sleep, could not sleep that night. I woke up the next morning, I said, guys, I just couldn't sleep.
Oh my gosh.
I kept thinking of possible ways I could have possibly won the game. Just couldn't think of it.
Oh my
I've
God.
had many sleepless nights due to board games. So.
Okay, so sidebar here. My wife is a twin. She's got a twin brother. So they have like a thing that's like
I didn't know that.
like the thing is like twin brain or whatever, twin
Yeah.
ESP or whatever. Do you guys like if you played like chess against each other, would it be like a double stalemate, checkmate, like because they're thinking the same thing, or like you know what I mean? Or is there a board game where you guys play and you're like that, where you just cannot outsmart the other one because you both know kind of what you're gonna do next?
I think
this is more into twin dynamics than board games, but I'm just genuinely curious.
100%.
Yeah, it's maybe Stratego is a really good example where we would like set up the flags in the same spot.
Okay,
but like I don't know. I don't think that we have very different brains, even though we're very similar people.
Okay,
so we have played pranks on people for being twins and faked that telepathy to an extent, but other than that, it's nice to be very similar to like where we can compete with one another and feel like we're on equal playing fields, but then also have like our own advantage and our own strategy.
Absolutely,
that's great. I literally had no idea that your wife is a twin.
Yeah, she's got
known
a twin.
Alan for 15 years.
The worst part is they will ask her. They'll be like, "Oh, so you're a twin?" And she'll say like, "Yeah, I've got a twin brother." And they'll be like, "So you guys identical?" No, absolutely
not how that works.
Like it's kind of like
it'd be mildly terrifying.
Yeah, like it's people's like second thought is, are they identical or not? And she will be like, "Of course not." Yeah, exactly.
It's so true.
So, so you guys have a history of playing games, and it seems to run in the family. At what point do you guys decide, you know what, we're doing this, we're making this, or was it whose idea was it?
It was my idea.
Yeah, I saw the mic turn there.
Yeah, so we've had this game like background for a while, and I think it was one of those moments where I was trying to kill some time and jotting down some ideas, and eventually I was like, hey, why don't I jot down some board game ideas? It was probably after a competitive game night or something. So I started writing down some ideas that I thought could make for an interesting game, and it was just anything that popped in my head. So it could be as much as how many players are there going to be? What are some of the actions you could do during the game? And not every one of those ideas was a good idea, but it's just the way my brain was flowing at that time. I was jotting the ideas down. So I would do that, and then I probably did that for a couple different game ideas, and I've got to one, and I had maybe a page full of notes that were just ideas from that game. And after taking all those notes down, I was like, wait a second, this would be a game I'd enjoy playing, so what can I do more with this idea?
Right.
Naturally, who's the person I'm going to go to first?
Yeah.
I literally walk over to Ben, and I was like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Which, asking Ben for the opinion and idea is not something I do very often, because we butt heads every once in a while too, especially when it comes to game ideas.
Sure.
And I'm sure we'll get into that more later. But for an idea like this, I pitched it to him, and he was like, yeah, I actually kind of like that idea.
Not that bad.
When I get one of those, like, hey, it's not that bad. Like, that's high praise in my mind.
Right.
It's like a 9 out of 10.
yeah. So we needed to vet it out some more from that point on. But I was like, do you have any interest in maybe trying this side hustle, like trying to make a board game business out of this? And he said, sure.
Yeah.
It was 3 years ago.
Oh,
was
wow.
it really?
Started that. Yeah.
That's where it all.
Okay.
That's
been a long time.
So did you feel like so you put out the idea?
Yeah.
How long did it take? You gave some approval to be like, well, let's actually put quote unquote pen to paper and start writing out what this could put, like, rather than ideas in your own head.
Yeah, I think I was a hesitant buy-in. So that's a pretty good idea, but I didn't want to like take it too much further. We were busy at work. We had our own lives going on. But John's like, okay, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to push it forward a little bit and like started out just like sketching it on Excel. Like, we're both engineers, kind of nerdy backgrounds.
Yeah, sure.
Like, how else can you put pen on paper without putting pen on paper, and do it on Excel?
Excel spreadsheets all day. Yes.
So we he made the track, or like our original board on Excel, printed it out, laminated it up, and taped it to a piece of cardboard, and said, okay, let's try it out a little bit. And so it started there, and then he like showed me. He's like, look, we could do this, and I'm like, yeah, okay, we could.
It makes sense.
I feel like each step you took was like John getting more confidence from Ben of like that we can keep going. Like, it's like, no, look what I did here. Now we can keep doing this. And like, and that helped. It's honestly, to have someone who's so close to you kind of give you even a spark of motivation. That's sometimes all it takes.
Yeah.
I had that experience a lot too.
And he was testing him the whole time. Like, all right, at what point is he going to drop out of this?
That was a lot of my fear during this, because we actually finally came up with an idea, and it seemed far-fetched at the time, but the more I'd pitch it and the more he was on board, it was kind of a surprise at first, but then it the passion behind it kind of grew as we got more involved and more involved. And I think winter of 2019, it was over our holiday break from work, and we're just like, you know what? Let's see how much work it would take. So we did all this research, and we started our LLC for TNT Creative Gaming.
Yeah.
That's our company. And it's a big learning curve, and we're doing a lot of learning still, and we still will do a lot more learning. But as we kind of went through all of that, it formed into what it is now. And
Sure.
I think when I started making suggestions, that's when I knew I was bought into it.
Oh,
It was like,
sure.
well, what if we did this instead? Like, or
Yeah.
what if we tweaked that rule just a little bit? And
Yeah.
so it came down to, oh, I'm invested. Okay.
You realized all of a sudden, oh man, I got to see this through now for sure.
I did. Yeah.
So obviously there is much more than just printing Excel sheets and
Yeah.
taping them
I
to a
don't
board and
believe it.
trying to do it. Otherwise, we would have had our own,
Yeah,
we would have had
we're
our
good to
own
go.
game years ago.
Uh-huh.
No. So there's more to that. At what point do you think, okay, we can at least manufacture a prototype, or what is the next step? Because I would assume that's not something that the average person knows is how to just go get a board game made,
So,
right?
fun fact, there is a prototype board game manufacturer, and they do some small scale production, but in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
Wow.
So, yeah, it's
Wow, that
called
was actually easier than I thought.
It
it
was.
was
Yeah,
gonna
I
be.
really was
literally,
expecting that.
you play board games all the time, and then you do a Google search for like prototype board game manufacturers, and it's Madison, Wisconsin. The Game Crafter is quite a well-known board game producer.
Okay.
So we reached out to them to get a quote on what would it take to make this game, and we're like, that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We could do that.
Yeah,
So
and
then-
would they require like a prototype of like what like the full sort of game along with all the rules? Like what goes into like here's the thing that we have.
Yeah, so we took a couple steps. So we started with the rules. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was John has the ideas written down on paper. And this is probably where the most bickering occurred throughout
Sure.
the entire
I can imagine.
process. And it was drives up to Door County where we would maybe get a paragraph in the 2-hour drive.
Oh gosh.
And
Oh,
it was
wow.
just like that. It was like just nitpicking wording and figuring out
Yeah.
how can you, because we're going to look for the loopholes. We're going to figure out
Always.
how can a competitive player
Yeah.
cheat our game, or how
Yeah.
can you do something we don't intend to.
Yeah, that's
to
what
happen.
I'd be thinking about that. Like if my dad's playing this game, what would he do to try and win? Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's
If I was playing this game,
Yeah.
what would I try and do to win it? Yes, that's totally how I would go about it. Okay.
Yeah, so with that in mind, aside from my wife and Ben's fiance getting mad at us because we're driving in separate cars, going to the same place, driving in separate
oh
cars.
gosh,
So either my wife is driving, Ben's fiance is driving, and while they're driving, the other one of us is on the phone. What do you think of this? And you just hear our significant others in the background. For the love of God, just pick something by now. Like, it got to a point.
Figure it
where it's
out.
hard. But after we came up with a lot of those ideas, we knew if we wanted to get a prototype done, we'd want it to look more professional than an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So the next logical step for us is, who do we know that we can reach out to that does like design? Like,
Oh yeah.
illustrations, and we went back to Marquette.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Okay.
thought of who did we know at Marquette that did this kind of stuff, and we went to a previous hall director, Zachary. I'm gonna butcher his last name.
oh,
Sure.
I know
Wait, Ben,
Zachary.
go.
Zachary
Yeah.
Staszewski.
There we go.
Very tan, dark hair.
Oh, yeah.
I'm,
Yep.
I'm
Zachary's
Polish
awesome.
and I still don't.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Staszewski.
Don't ask me to
Don't
spell
ask
it.
me to spell it. I was just gonna say it's
Okay,
not gonna
well,
spell very well.
Zachary.
Yes.
Very creative. We've seen illustrations from being a hall director and some of the posters that were put up, and I said, let's just reach out to Zachary. We know
Yeah.
him from a running group we're a part of, and see if he'd be interested in this. And he jumped on board eagerly, said something maybe a little outside his wheelhouse, but something he wanted to try.
Sure.
Awesome.
And we
I
said,
love
hey,
that response. That's great. Yeah.
He was upfront and honest with us, and we said, this is new for us too. It's going to be some growing pains, but if you're interested in trying it out, we're going to try it out with you.
Be the guinea pig. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he came out with first was just, let's get a company logo for TNT Creative Gaming. We went through a handful of different visuals, no idea what we wanted in mind, and he just sends back this graphic of like 6 different logos, and we're like, these are great. Like, let's pick between these. And it's like,
That's
did I know it's
awesome.
going to be this easy? Yeah.
Yeah.
Picking them.
I think that's part of the appeal too, is it has to look cool before you even get to playing it. Like if the visual of it isn't
Yeah.
great, you know what I mean? Like you're kind of halfway.
Did you have an idea of that visual? Like, did you like I'm sure he asked you some questions. Right, this like we're looking for like this theme or this vibe for it too.
So we knew we wanted something environment based.
Okay.
So like the premise is you're gathering a mythic gem from each of the 4 environment boards.
Okay.
And so we started with, okay, what are like environments that we could possibly use? So we started, okay, obviously you've got like a mountainy terrain, you've got grasslands, you've got the water, you've got volcanic rock, sand, things like that. We're like, how do we make these into boards? And we knew like we had ambitions of what is the coolest thing we could do. I mean, everyone says don't judge a book by a cover, but what do we all do? We look at the cover and we say,
especially for this too,
yeah,
like,
I mean, the board game is, if
Yeah.
you don't think it jumps off the shelf at you, you're not going to buy it. I'm not even going to pick it up and look at it.
No.
Yeah.
So
That
we
makes
knew
sense.
it had to be something fun and creative, but we wanted the game itself to let the mechanics speak for it a little bit more. So we knew we wanted something like a little more neutral that still had the environment backgrounds. And then we would let the board cover or the box cover really have our biggest animation and illustration on it.
Sure.
So it was,
Because that's the thing that pops. That's
yeah,
the thing that
so
comes at
we
you
had
first.
our ideas, but Zachary really was the one who fine-tuned
How many
everything.
drafts back and forth with
So
him?
many.
I'm sure, like
So many.
over 20.
I think we kept it under 20.
Okay.
But it would
There
be
you go.
like meeting. It would get to that point where he's like, let's just meet. Let's sit down and let's
And talk, yeah.
talk through
Yeah.
it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think with our game, as we first mentioned, designed it in Excel. With Excel, you've got nice little squares. You can tell what the pathway is going to be. You know where each component can move. When you start to make that more abstract and say, all right, we're working through an environment, each one of the spaces is going to be a unique ovular or circular or square looking little space to land on.
Yeah.
One of the biggest critiques we'd have to say is we'd go through each board and say, hey, I think someone could actually try to go diagonally across that piece because it's angled too much in that one direction. Like,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
as nitpicky as we'd have to get because we'd have somebody playing, they'd go on a diagonal and you're like,
That's not
dang
where
it, that's
you
not how
skip in.
you
yeah.
can't skip that
Such
space.
a good point.
So
That's what I would try to do to win the game.
I agree.
Yeah.
I had someone try it this last weekend. It didn't go very well. But it's something as simple as that you
Yeah.
don't necessarily think of when you go and I didn't think about that's what we're
Yeah.
going to need to nitpick when we go into the game. I just know this is how the game plays.
Yeah.
Right.
But now there's all this other aspects to it.
Was there like I don't want to use the word like manual. Were there experiences that you had read about or like people trying in your same like to be like my experience was that it took me 5 months longer than I thought it was going to try and make a game. Like, did you have that going in a little bit more too?
Yeah, and I think there are so many blogs out there these days where
too many.
there's it's really saturated, but there are some good ones
Yeah.
if you do some digging. And I don't have them off the top of my head to reference, but we looked at a lot of like thinking long term, how to launch a Kickstarter. Like
Yeah.
that's what we knew we wanted to do at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we started with those kinds of blogs, and then we switched back to how to promote a game, how to design the game, how to get play testers involved,
Yep.
those kinds of components. But when it came to how to make a game, I don't think we referenced anything. We just we play games.
Yeah,
we,
you,
Yeah.
you knew
figured
sort of
we
that
knew
that
how
yeah
to
what was
make a
going to go
game.
into that.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to make a game, but we we struggled.
Does
our
anyone
way
right?
through
You go into
Yeah.
it, you learn something. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes total sense.
How has the reception been from the people that have played it so far? And do they think? I mean, have you run into anything that's been very frustrating to be like, no, you're supposed to go here, other than just this piece is or this one little dot is angled the wrong way?
Yeah,
But have
no.
you seen somebody play it and just be like, no, you're doing it all wrong?
I think at the start we probably had a little bit more of that reactions to it, and we wanted to use playtesters as a way for us to develop the game into the best game it could be.
Okay.
So one of the biggest points of feedback we received during playtesting was from some people who we knew who have a usual board game group. They meet up after work, and they're a very competitive group, like we are, but to the extreme.
Okay.
And previously, we have these player reference cards that just show you what are each one of your little action tokens do. And on each one of those reference cards, they were just the same across all 5 players. Each player is also a different color meeple, though, on the board. And what one of the guys said is, I want to know what color meeple that person is over there because they have a lot of the mythic gems they need to collect. I want to target them now.
Sure.
And we said, well, there's a way we can do that. We just color-coded each one of the reference cards. Something as simple as that, like adding color, which adds no cost to our already colorful design,
Right.
was one piece that we could do to help them have that aspect they wanted.
I just want to back up real quick. You said it's a colored what?
Meeple.
Meeple?
Yeah, the little like wooden pieces or acrylic.
I've been hearing meatball the whole time, and I just rolled with it.
We're too close to dinner.
M-E-E,
Yeah.
P-L-E.
There you go.
Meeple. Okay.
I'm so glad you asked because
I'm
I
gonna
just
use that
literally
as
assumed meatball.
I want to use that as an insult.
meatball.
Yeah, meeple. All right. Anyway.
That'd be good.
Yeah, there were those. There were like moments where like I would use our own rules and beat John. Like we have an action token called an airlift, which allows you to move your explorer to the same place or spot as another explorer. And John was a roll away from the finish. And I strategically waited till he had gotten there.
Yeah.
And then I went over that action token, got to his spot, and then beat him at the finish.
Oh.
And he was so upset that
I
he
think it's
changed
still
the
ups-
rules.
Oh, he changed the rules.
We like updated the rules and said you cannot use an airlift to go to the finish board.
That stung. That really stung.
So
it hurt.
we have had our own play testing amongst ourselves where it was just like in competition, you're like that
isn't
was
this
too powerful.
Is this the dream that if you lose, you just change the rule?
Yeah.
I wish I could just do that with a guy I love. Well, I guess that's not going to happen.
I did
anymore.
that for years.
Can't do that.
That's too powerful. We're gonna change
No,
that.
we're just
Yeah.
going to change it. That's hysterical.
But I mean, I think that's the best
Yeah.
way to figure out.
You really
hey,
do. You can
your
perfect it.
product testing. Like what is somebody gonna do that is
Yeah.
gonna make this game not fun for someone
Yeah.
else? Kind of. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And we've gotten really good feedback elsewhere. Like we've actually, so we're in the middle of our campaign right now
Yeah.
on
Uh-huh.
Kickstarter.
That's right.
And we have started to switch to talking to more retailers to talk through, okay, thinking about the campaign, we have a lot of great individual backers. They'll get our games, but what do we do for the next step? So we need to get retailers involved.
Yeah.
And John's been doing a lot of legwork. Do you want to tell them about our big retail backer right now?
Yeah, we've got a really big retail company up in. So as we know, we mentioned our car rides are where we've done a lot of our back and forth talking about it. We go up to Door County often.
Yeah.
There's a store literally in the town where my parents grew up, Sturgeon Bay, up in Door County. There's a store called the Noshery.
Okay.
And Pat Fuji up there has been so helpful in coming up with how do we make this game better? How do we trial out a product? How do we pitch it to retailers? And he's given us a lot of feedback on that. And with that in mind, he offered to back a large quantity of the games for us.
Awesome.
But then also kind of gave us that in on how do we go about interacting with retailers. Like
Yeah.
we want to have those conversations. We want to know that we're saying the right things. And even just through word of mouth, other coworkers have found out, hey, you guys are looking at retailers. There's a new store that just popped up in August.
Yeah.
So we went and talked to them, and we get a lot of great feedback that maybe we can't incorporate in this game, but we keep it in mind for the next games. And we're building those relationships, as Ben mentioned. We can't do this all on personal asks from
Right.
friends and family. We're going to need those retailers to push us across that line.
For sure. Tell me a little bit about the Kickstarter aspect too, because it's actually something that we haven't really discussed here on this show. Is crowdfunding for your project and to get things off the ground. What is that? How has that experience been for you guys? I know that you told us just before this that you're very close to the goal, which is great. But tell me about. I want to know about the 0 to 25% of the backing. How you got that initial like foot forward to be like, okay, I think we're gonna make some money here. You know.
So we had been waffling back and forth. Like, when do we start the campaign? Like, we had the design pretty much finalized. We'd gotten our manufacturing partner finished. They've sent us prototypes. They looked great. We had our fulfillment finalized, and we knew how we were going to do our freight forwarding. So we had all of the like pieces in place. The one we didn't really line up well was marketing. Like, how do we get an audience? We have a lot of friends. we know we're going to get a lot of
They'll
backers.
tell some people. and,
They'll tell their
word of
friends, and
mouth.
then it'll go from there. So we decide, okay, on Kickstarter, you pretty much get a 1 week window of build your page, have it set up, have a like pre-launch where you say we're launching in a week, and then you're live. And it wasn't until that week that we really started looking at like, what do other people say? Like we'd read a lot of things and we'd set up our page really well and we had a great idea, but they're like, okay, just imagine that if you have a really good, strong email listserv, like if you have 1,500 people, expect at least 10 of them to back.
Yeah.
Or something super.
totally.
No, it was less than 10%.
Oh my
it was
gosh.
so small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're like looking at our listserv and we're like, it is not that big.
40.
Yeah.
We have a small listserv right now, but we were nervous, like
Yeah,
that first
sure.
25%. So I'll let John take over. But.
Yeah. And I mean, Breaking and Entering also runs a Patreon, and initially we were like, oh, we got like 5,000 people on our, like at the time on our Facebook or whatever. We're like, if they all just kick in $5, it's going to be great.
Yeah. We'll
Dead in the water from the start. Yeah. The initial month was just like, okay, cool. We got one guy. Great. We got to make content for one guy. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I think for us, the way they describe Kickstarter, for those that aren't fully familiar, it's just a crowdfunding website that you can use that people can offer to put skin in the game. So they can say, I will back this product if enough other people agree that it's worth backing. Because if you get enough backers, say our goal right now is $15,000. So if we can get people to say, I will spend $28, $30, $32 to back a copy of the game, and you get enough of those to get to the $15,000, the game is then fully backed, and then people are charged. So you're not charged until the game's actually successful. If it's not successful, no one's charged.
Got it.
That's nice.
So that's kind of a nice safety blanket for the people that are on the fence of backing it.
Yeah.
But the way they describe it is the first maybe quarter usually goes really well.
Okay.
Then you start to plateau.
Yeah.
And then the last quarter usually goes really well.
Okay.
So that first quarter was all the people that's like we've talked to ahead of time that said, hey, we're about to launch this game, like family, close friends, the people we've talked up to a lot.
Yeah.
That went really well. You get to that first day and you hit like $1,000,
like,
$2,000 in the first couple of days, and you're like, we're on track. You keep this going, like we're hitting $20,000, $30,000.
Yeah.
And then it starts to slow down a little bit, and you're like, oh, okay, we're still on track.
Yeah.
But it's going slower. So then you kind of have to start thinking, all right, what can we do more? So we reached out to people that have done crowdfunding in the past, like a friend of ours, Nathaniel Stern from UWM, who's very good at crowdfunding and also does a lot of helps entrepreneurs out. And his big thing was, yeah, you're a little late to needing to get people, but you're going to have to start doing some personal asks. And that's hard to do.
Yeah.
When they're like, yeah, you just have to go ask people. And don't be indirect and say like, hey, it'd be really nice if you backed a game. You have to go up and ask them, can you back a game right now?
Straight up.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Yeah. To go 1-to-1 to people and I mean, are we talking like these are phone calls? Or are these like you're meeting people?
Thankfully, we didn't get too far yet into that. I mean, we still have a week to go. We might be breaking into the phone calls and the door-to-door rings, but like it was going through our Facebook contacts, and rather than posting on Facebook and saying our new game is live, it was going through my Facebook A to Z, all of my friends, and messaging everyone that I'm like somewhat close to still, and saying like, hey, not sure if you saw, but we just launched our board game. We could really use your support at the start of this campaign.
Yeah, sure.
And it wasn't just like copy paste. It was like a, hey, no, we haven't chatted in a while. Really miss our time together going to Marquette basketball games or something. I had to keep it personal. I had to keep it otherwise I would hate myself for copy pasting.
Right.
And I knew what would I want to receive from people.
So you become somehow salesmen, and you've become somehow marketers, and you've become somehow board game developers just out of doing this. Is there like social media profiles for the game yet?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have a website, which apparently I'm now a website designer too.
Yeah.
Zachary came through and helped with that. He's like, yeah, it looked good. I went back and looked at it after he took a look at it. Much better. Much better. So he has a lot more of a background for that. But then we also have an Instagram.
At TNT Creative Gaming.
There it is. Perfect.
So our Instagram account just started a while back when we kind of started the company, and we've slowly been posting more and more as the game is getting more active.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to do reels or anything. So we started by, all right, hey, Kelsey, my wife's younger sister who's still in college, how do you make a reel? And like we're learning all the basics of social media. And we just started a Facebook page after people have said like, hey, it'd be really good if you're contacting all these retailers if you have like a presence outside of Instagram.
Yeah.
So we just started a Facebook page, but the learning on Instagram was already a lot as is, but someone's got to do it, and it's just us two.
Right.
We also have a TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
I'm not great on TikTok yet, but we are slowly building that. No, I think I'm too old for TikTok, but I'm happy to be on there.
You're there.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, it kind of levels the playing field now, because like TikTok and Reels and those things for us, we've actually noticed it with the podcast. We've gotten some like some of our like YouTube short stuff where like we'd get like 1,800 plays and we had
All of a
like
sudden.
10 followers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it kind of changes the way, like, you don't have to build up a huge list or a huge follower base now and then get things. If you have the right keywords in there,
Yep.
Yeah.
it might show
100%.
up for you guys now. So that might get some backers.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious if you guys hit the goal, is there a time limit on when you have to hit the goal by?
Yeah, so we have 9 days left, I think.
Oh,
9
God,
days.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right.
But we are.
What are you doing here? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we're pretty much at 80%. Yeah, we're doing some promoting here.
Yeah.
So by the time that this comes out, you'll be in the final days.
Yes.
So it
It's
should
gonna
be-
say, 2 days
Yeah.
left, people.
Yeah.
So the link will be on
and
here.
we've been doing a lot of
Back it
marketing,
up.
like you've already alluded to. We were just featured in Milwaukee Magazine,
Awesome.
Nice.
which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And we've got some other newsletters that are going out that we're featured in. So we're doing the legwork, but we're pretty confident we're going to get this thing funded.
Excellent.
We're looking forward to it.
And if they hit the goal, like everybody that funded, do they get a copy of the game?
Yeah, so on our Kickstarter, you have a couple different options you can select. So it's anywhere from 1 copy of the game, 2 copies of the game. You can add on additional copies of the game. You can
Okay.
even, as a retailer, you have to get a minimum of 5 copies of the game. So after you've been charged the amount for each one of those options, you'll get charged that. We'll immediately kick off our manufacturer. And then we
Sure.
have to wait the whole manufacturing lead time, which is, I think it's almost like
while.
10 weeks or something.
More than that.
More than
Okay.
that. Yeah, actually, much more than that. I'm thinking of manufacturing and engineering industry.
right.
So
Yeah.
you've got different lead times for everything. And the last thing we want to do as a new business is let people down and over-promise, under-deliver.
Right.
So we are, I think retail right now, to get it to the backers, our goal is June.
Awesome.
Okay. Very
Awesome.
cool. And it's cool that you're being very transparent about like, look, this does not show up on your doorstep by
Yeah.
Christmas. You know, like
It's gonna take a little while. I
So-
feel that.
And we had to be careful too, because we had people that were like, hey, back this game, it would be a great Christmas present. And we're like, ooh, careful. Like we're gonna make a great, like,
Yeah.
you can give this to your family member, like as a, like, here's what's coming for you in
Sure.
June, watch along with the progress. It's kind of, you get a little buy-in to
Totally,
it. So it's
totally.
fun from that perspective, but you're not getting a game in
No,
December.
this won't be under the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
For sure. I had something else I was going to ask you about this, and I totally forgot about the Kickstarter aspect of things, and I blanked.
That's okay.
So,
Well, I know. So like, let's say this day of next year, November 27th, 2024. What does success look like for you guys if you're looking a year forward? Is it the amount you sold? Is it gone on to the next game? Where do you want to be? Where do you feel
Thank
like
you,
it's
Jim.
gonna
That
take
was what I was going to ask, is if there were more games on the horizon.
Yeah,
and
you
I just
mentioned
totally
it.
just blanked
Yeah,
out.
I got you. This
I
is
think
telepathy.
this is going to be a great question for both of us to
Our
answer.
twin telepathy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think success feels different for
Sure.
both of us.
Yeah, of course.
For me, success is taking a breath, I think, from
Yeah.
Awesome.
what we've done. I bought a house during the middle of like getting ready to launch our campaign,
Yeah.
and I moved in. My fiance did most of the moving, so shout out to her for that. But we've done so much stuff on top of our day-to-day stuff
Yeah.
that I know John wants to jump into a next game, and we will get there eventually. But for me, it's getting it onto retailer shelves, keeping it on their shelves,
Yeah.
and maintaining a steady purchase, like making sure that people are still buying it and we're growing so that the next time we launch a crowdfunding campaign, we have that 1,500 person list served.
Sure.
So it's continuing to promote, talking to media, getting in the right places. But by this time next year, I just want to be kind of happy and stable.
Good for
Very
you.
cool.
That's a great answer.
I like it. If there's a place, like we
Well,
said...
do you have another answer?
Oh,
to
I'm
that?
sorry. Yes.
Honestly, mine was, he might think it's different. I have my list of next game ideas.
Yeah.
And I've pitched him one, and he's like, yeah, that would make for a good next game. We still got to hash it out like in all of our drives and everything. But I
Yeah.
agree with him, just being settled down
Yeah.
and good and solid base, because you have to start with a solid foundation. If we can start with a solid foundation and go from there, the backing will come easier and easier on each campaign to eventually the point where we'd like to not have to go through Kickstarter. But for small companies like us,
yeah.
it's just the most feasible option.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Now, I think this is so important because I think, and I'm wired this way too. When you get something, you get a win. Something happens, you're like, let's do the next one. Like quickly, it's a very easy way to get burnt out. Is
Yeah.
by going that hard. No matter how passionate you are for it, I love that you gave that response. I was actually hoping you would, because that was going to be my point. So thank you for leading into that. But I think it's really critical to have that space to actually reflect of like, we did an amazing thing, going to be towards the end of the year or 24, right? Like something will be next, and you guys, I'm sure, will talk about it, bother your wives and everything when it kind of comes down to it and on the drive. But it's really critical that we all sort of have whatever that space is for you to recognize how it went, and then be like, now let's get into the next thing
use
after,
those
after I'm done
lessons,
doing
yeah.
it. 100%. Anyway, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was
before
going to
did that.
say, we know about the Instagram and the Facebook page. What are those handles again, just so that people can kind of follow the game and watch it kind of develop and get to some shelves?
So our handle on both of them is just TNT Creative Gaming.
Okay.
Excellent.
All one thing?
All one thing.
Perfect.
All put together. So that's our handle on that. Is that the same handle on TikTok?
It is. Yeah.
Awesome.
Same handle
There
on
you go.
TikTok, and our little slogan we use for our company is at TNT Creative Gaming, we're here to ignite your next game night.
There you go.
Nice.
I like it.
And guys, we have 2 days until this is the deadline for Kickstarter. The link is in the bio of this podcast.
Absolutely.
But John and Ben are obviously doing great work. They're very passionate about what they do, and you could be a part of them breathing next year and doing it.
Let
relaxing.
these guys breathe.
Let them take a breath.
Yeah.
If they don't take a breath, it's all on you. Okay, that's what it is. But I think it's awesome. I think you're going to do great. I'm very confident that you're going to get to
Same.
where you need
Very
to be.
much.
And,
Appreciate it.
But you pulled the mic over, Ben. Did you want to say something?
I
else? I'm
didn't.
sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for having us on here.
Of
It's
course.
a great opportunity for us to spread the word as well.
Happy
Absolutely.
to. And if you actually, one thing we should probably mention is that John, Allen, and I are both on the Young Alumni Board at Marquette. And
Ben.
I'm sorry,
Ben.
you're on it
All
too.
four
All
of
four of
us.
us.
All
Yes.
We're all on this.
Yes, the first meeting I was in a whole different place, but yes, it's really cool. That's kind of how we met, because we didn't go to college together.
Nope, that's
people
correct.
forget that we were Alan and I are too old to have gone to college with both of you, and that's what it comes down to. But it's really cool. You get to meet, and that's another networking. We plug that a lot is join things, and it leads to an opportunity to have a conversation with people and hear about Mythic Gems. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
excited for it. I'm
I am
excited
too.
for the game.
It's gonna be great.
And thank you guys for coming on the show and
Yes.
doing this.
No, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Let's get a thank you off. No, thank you. Go
No,
ahead.
thank you.
No, thank you.
All right.
pleasure.
No more thanking. Everyone's too thankful. No,
It's a thank you all.
and thank you all for listening
too.
and checking out this episode of the podcast. Don't forget, we are Hustling Sideways everywhere. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, all the platforms.
Your podcast.
Yeah, your podcast, you meeple.
I love a meatball.
We are on Facebook. We're on X. We are on. I'm trying to call it X.
I know.
We're on
You
Instagram.
always
We're on LinkedIn now, which is
are.
like a new thing.
Professional
Which
as
we should have actually been on LinkedIn a long time ago. We're on
okay.
YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Like I said, if you want to be a guest on this podcast as well, send us an email, hustlingsideways@gmail.com. And Jim,
keep on hustling.
we'll see you next week.